Welcome again to another episode of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality Podcast. Chris Palmer, Piranha Training, mental performance coach for hockey players. Jeff Lerg, former professional athlete and goalie mentors. Today, like every day, we're here trying to give you actionable things that you can use right now to help you in your big hockey dream or in the hockey dream of people you love. And today we're going to talk about something that affects everybody. No human being is spared from anxiety. We're going to talk about anxiety and how to face that monster. I want you to know, every single person I've ever met eventually runs into something where they hit their head. And if you can hit your head and move on, it's great. But some people hit their head and they stay stuck in that spot. And that is anxiety, this pervasive sense, this long sense of dread. We're going to talk about how to attack that and beat that. Jeff, before we were recording, we talked about a youth athlete you worked with who's really, really successful. He's on a really good trajectory. But I'd love you to tell me a story about him and what you saw that you think maybe even kind of held him back some around anxiety.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So a goalie I worked with and still continue to work with in his teenage years, and again, those are always the years where many things are going on, life changes, influenced by your environment more heavily than other stages of your life. But there was one of the goalies, he would come up to me almost every weekend and ask, did coach say anything? Did they say anything about how I played? And I would ask him, well, how did you play? What should the coach tell me about your performance? Oh, yeah, no, we won both games, and I got a shutout in one and let up one in another. I'm like, well, do you think the coach would be happy with that performance? Like, those are the little things where I look bewildered at times. Like, why is he asking me? Like, I never had to deal with that. None of my goalie partners, at least, ever brought that up to me. None of my closest friends. So that was, to me, at the time, was like, why does this kid have to keep asking me how he did? And vice versa. If he got pulled after 4 goals and they lost 6-1, what do you think the coach is going to say? He's not going to say, oh, that the goalie was so great. I was so happy with how he did. Of course, you have to be able to filter through the reality of the situation. So yeah, you bring up a lot, doubt, fear, worry. That's the one example that came to my mind on the self-doubt that can occur when both things are good and bad in terms of your performance.
That's awesome. And I think the big thing here is we don't want to talk about stuff like this, right? Like, who wants to talk about doubt, fear, worry, anxiety? Just get better, get better, get better. And it'd be great to get better. It would be awesome, but it ignores this human thing we have. We have this built-in security system in us. Doubt, fear, worry is all about protecting ourselves, which makes sense. Let's go back to caveman times. If we were a bunch of cavemen, we didn't have this podcast, we're just out in the middle of a freezing winter in Michigan, and we're just trying to survive. It's complete survival. And it would be so good if at nighttime, while you're sleeping in the woods, if you hear some footsteps in the woods, it'd be good if you jump up and there's an alarm and all of a sudden you got to do something because something is wrong. This alarm system is built into us, but we live in a society, it's fairly civilized, as crazy as things are, and there's still this thing in our head that's always scanning for danger. Anytime there's a loud noise, if there was a giant explosion outside, even though it's far away, we'd still turn our heads. So we have this thing built into us, but there's not a lot of things to really worry about. I mean, really, is making a team the end of the world? Probably not. But we worry about it just like survival. And I think the big answer is to realize that we have this kind of warning system in us, always worried about things, but to use that warning system to our advantage. That warning system tells us something's wrong or something might be wrong. And if we can find a way to do something about it in that moment, use it as an alarm clock to react and go, okay, well, something's wrong. What am I going to do? And here's a good example. If you get pulled, sucks, right? I don't know how many goalies do the skate of shame coming back to the bench and they just got sucks and they're sitting there and they're just stewing. They're just spinning on, I'm never going to play again. I'm going to lose my gig here. My parents are going to be pissed, whatever it is. It's so hard. But if you can take that for a minute, suck it up, or like we talked about, privately acknowledge it or puke it out, work some way through that, then you can manage through that so it doesn't become persistent anxiety. It just becomes this thing where my alarm system went off, feel kind of anxious about this sucks, but what am I going to do now? And the only answer is go bust your ass for everything you want and get better. So, Jeff, I'm really curious, though. You do exist in this other world, and a lot of the guys you were around exist in a much different world. And that world doesn't have a lot of acknowledging of anxiety. Not so much because it doesn't exist as much as it is you are always so focused on what could be done. So focused on your whole thing, dialed driven. It's about you going for what's really possible. That's who you are. And you kind of surrounded yourself with people like that. Can you tell me, in your groups, how did people deal with disappointment and find a way to use it as an alarm clock and kind of move forward? Was there a time where people had to kind of lick their wounds a little? Did they ever just let off some steam somewhere and then jump back in? Can you tell us about any of that?
Yeah, I think everyone has their time period where they need to reset, and people can do that in any way that they feel most comfortable with. I know for the group that I was fortunate enough to be around, again, I played on a real competitive youth team and then made it in the USHL, which is America's top junior league. And of course, there's still underachievers that make that setting, and you kind of get weeded out onto the next level of college hockey. But I think I always did a real good job of finding those like-minded people to surround myself with, and maybe they all hid their frustrations or doubt, fear, worry. But I think in general, everyone that I was around, and myself included, I think there's always that point, like you referenced, getting pulled. Like that's one of the worst feelings in all of sports. Like you're literally sitting there, it could be 10 minutes into a game. You have to watch your team the rest of the game. You obviously have to find a way to be a supportive teammate, and you can't be in this attack mode that's necessary in order to overcome the anxiety or the failure. Like you have to be in more of a kind of waiting period. And then when it's time, your next time to get into that attack mode, that's when you have to go after it. So if I had a bad weekend or a bad game, of course, that Monday practice was always really good effort. Maybe not the best execution. Maybe my game was a little bit off in timing or anything of that nature, but there was always this mindset of like, got to go attack the problem. And I can say that for even others. My cousin Brian was on the podcast. He would always be in that mode after a bad game. Eric Condra, one of my real good friends, same thing. I think that was a very common theme where you didn't just let it stew for a long period of time. You had to go after it and work through it.
And I really think that it's such a great life lesson. It's absolutely the truth. This thing exists. People get disappointed. People have to reset. Some people are very private about it. Some people meditate about it. Some people puke it out. Some people acknowledge it, whatever it is. But you talked about this very real thing that it isn't like you just immediately turn around. Now, in a game, you have to. You have no choice. You got to suck it up and figure it out. But outside of a game, there's some time to lick your wounds. There's some time to kind of work through that. But then the only answer is to attack. The only answer is to come back. And I have this kind of dumb reference of facing the monster and the monster shrinks. And it's the truth because all these monsters, whatever they are, these things that make us sick in our stomach. And there's people that I talk to who are so sick in their stomach because they're worried about losing their coaching job. Sick in their stomach because, how am I going to pay my mortgage for my, like I got a college coach I work with, and he's worried about how he's going to pay after his contract's over. He knows he's not going to get another gig. He hasn't had a really successful run. And these things are with everybody. Everybody has this stuff. But facing the monster is the way, but not ignoring the fact that you've got something, but acknowledging it, dealing with it, talking about it. And I think one of the big problems we have in the world, but definitely in the hockey world, is throw some dirt on it. Don't be like that. Just figure it out. Be tough. I agree. Be tough. When I coach people about being in games, there's no time to feel sorry for yourself. 2 seconds and you got to be back in. You just got the game is too short to spend a lot of time pondering things. But the opposite has happened, and that's that people talk about sports performance, mental performance is not a real thing. I'm not even sure we need it. You might be right, until you realize that you've got guys who are so consumed, they haven't found some way to get this outlet out that they can't move on. So the problem is there's been so much success without acknowledging this, but there can be so much more success just by acknowledging and moving on. And I've seen it over and over again. Give you an example. Hadley Hudak's a perfect example. He's like big as an NHL guy. And this is all public knowledge. This guy played 18s all the way. He played 3 years of juniors, and he didn't get a D1 gig until right after the season was over. Can you imagine what that must be like working all this time and thinking you have the chance to do this, and then you finally get this chance at the end? The whole way has to be full of, is it going to work? It's not going to work. But he does a great job of facing the monster. He does a great job of just, okay, everything I have. And that's the magic trick you meant too. So for me, I think this facing the monster thing is a great theme, because if you face the monster, you realize it's not as big as you thought it was. And if you don't, it stays there and it becomes this sense of dread.
Yeah, and I think that monster grows in 2 different areas. One that we've talked about is that comparison game. Teenagers especially that are looking for approval from a coach or a trainer are all just primarily going to be comparing themselves to others who had who have the scholarship, who are getting junior looks, or who, comparing to those who've come through a program previously. So there's always that comparison game that adds to that doubt, fear, worry. And then secondly, there's external pressure applied somewhere. Something that has occurred with the training sessions that I've run through the years is I'll be speaking to a goalie and the bleachers are in the background or the stands are in the background, and I'll be looking him in the eye and he or she's looking over my shoulder looking for their parents to be looking down on them. So every word I'm saying is going in one ear and out the other because they're so worried about what the parents are thinking. Am I doing enough to appease them? So that, of course, that consumes the whole session. That consumes their mentality. They can't focus on what I'm saying. Now they're too worried about their parents. And so if there's that external pressure that's applying all that anxiety, then we lose our training time and they're really not making any strides. They're just trying to appease the person who brought them there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many stories get guys who are in high-level juniors, really high-level juniors, and they're looking in the stands, seeing how their advisor is acting, his arms crossed as he seemed disappointed, looking at their mom or dad. I've had somebody whose dad recorded everything, and then he walked out of a game halfway through. Guys in the net, what do you do? My dad just walked out. It's terrible. It feels terrible. And it's not something you can really quickly pass by. Like in your case, maybe one of the reasons you're more resilient is you always said you had a lot of love and support. Natalie said a lot of love and support. People believed in you. Really high standards, but also really loving and caring. You never had to wonder. There's a thing that happens with kids, and we talked about this before, where when your brain's developing, and again, your brain develops all the way to you're 25 years old, your brain is learning everything from the people around you, and you learn safety, security, and love from mom and dad, your caretakers. So if mom and dad are spending a lot of time telling you all the things you're doing wrong all the time, and maybe not so much telling you, I love you, I care about you, showing it, spending time in your life, hugging you, spending time with you, watching things you care about, sometimes you can feel like it's an algorithm. When I play good, I'm loved. When I'm not playing good, I'm not loved. I see it over and over. It's really, really hard. There's a guy I worked with, former NHL guy. He's got 2 Stanley Cups. And drunk, sometimes I'll get calls at 1 a.m. and he'll talk about stuff with his dad. And everybody has these things. They're just things that affect us. So for me, getting back to this thing, finding some way to express things out, finding some way to acknowledge them, finding some way to move on. And mom and dad, if you're listening, if you can, taking the pressure off of these games helps a lot. Being mom and dad is the antidote to all the pressure. It makes a huge difference.
And sometimes it's the resources put into a certain athlete. Sometimes that applies this pressure of, I got to go train where all the pro guys and girls train. I have to get X amount of private lessons. And of course, I'm in the mentoring world. I take a lot of pride in that. But it's not just that, we're going to be under Jeff Lerg's mentorship. You're automatically going to go to X, Y, and Z. So I do my best to try to relay that message. Hey, these are just the tools, the teaching points. We're going to keep hammering the messages of, hey, it's time to peak at this time of year. And, that's a waste of money in the summer to go to that tournament. And, you don't need to skate 5 days a week all summer. Like all those things can be done. And sometimes when you do more, you put more stress on yourself to go perform when it matters. So that's where I try to steer the conversation to say, no. Here's how you can kind of come off the stress, come off the anxiety of the position in the sport, and then ramp it back up. But many times there is that individual who the goaltender might have this internal anxiety built up because they can see how much time and energy that their parents are putting in to support them. Whether they know it or not, because they're still a young kid developing. And again, it's not saying that if you do more, it's going to hinder you, because I've seen the opposite side of it. And many times it's those that do a lot of work and their parents do put a lot of resources in. The goalies who have that attribute of kind of being dialed in, like they give their best energy. They don't need to ask questions about how they're doing. They don't need to be looking over their shoulder at their parents. They can reference who their upcoming opponents are. Like they're kind of just engaged in what they're working toward. Those are the ones who really succeed, because they're the ones that are kind of dragging their parents to the rink, and they're applying their own internal pressure, so to speak, and it's not external.
It just makes so much sense. I mean, I've never met a parent who didn't love his or her kid. I've never met that. Now, there was one mom a long time ago who I don't think had the capacity to love, period, which is an anomaly in humanity. It's not a normal thing. I'd say all parents love their kids, even the what you might call crazy parent, whatever that is, working too hard. But there's this other thing too, and I call it like being Michael Jordan's kid, this idea of if you have all this success around you and everybody's massively successful, sometimes even that becomes a pressure thing that you can build up this anxiety about, worrying about, God, do I fit in here? There is a family who I work with who's incredibly successful. I mean, professionally successful, athletically successful. There's a female in the family who was a Michigan State track star. I mean, and guys have doctorates and amazing. Everybody's successful and everybody's incredibly loving. But there's still this problem because the daughter is paralyzed most of the time when it comes to competing. And she's paralyzed because of what I call, being Michael Jordan's kid. I think sometimes just the environment, even with all the love in the world, if the environment is so high performing and it seems like the standards are so high, sometimes the kid can feel like, man, I need to be part of this or I'm not part of this. And it's not real. And it's an anxiety that's based in something irrational. So much of anxiety is based in irrationality, worrying that something's much bigger than it is, worrying that something's a monster when it's not. In the end, working through your stuff means looking at what the size of the monster is. Is it really a monster at all? And the truth is, if you get pulled, it sucks. If you don't make a team, it sucks. If you disappoint your parents one day, it sucks. But none of this stuff is life or death. None of it. And an old coach used to tell me, there's no pressure. You know what's pressure? The pressure's being an ER doc, cutting somebody's chest open to keep them from dying. That's pressure. And it's so true because that is pressure. I think it's undeniable that if somebody's in there in a life or death situation, that's pressure. But for most of us, it's desire and not getting something we desire. So let's take all the crap off and not be so irrational about it and see this anxiety for what it is and try to find a way to move past that by shrinking the monster, by facing it, by taking an action, by doing things you can control, because that's really the magic trick. You talked about it all the time. You said that the guys at the highest level are problem solvers. You said that the guys at the highest level just decide to be awesome. It's really the only choice. It's awesome.
And I think to kind of bring everything full circle, though, there is an appropriate amount of anxiety you need to have to perform well. I'll take myself back to my school days as a kid. Like, my parents never demanded straight A's. Can't tell you why I wanted to do it, but I wanted to be excellent in everything I did. I remember, having a little bit of stress applied when a test was coming up. I'd be making my flashcards. I'd be running through it. I'd be on the way to a hockey practice, going through my flashcards, studying my notebook, going through highlighting. But that was a certain amount of anxiety that helped me perform, and no different in athletics. If you just wake up in the morning and have no stress on the game that's going to be occurring that night and do nothing to help yourself, of course you're not going to get the results. So it's really about having the right amount of doubt, fear, worry of what you're going after, and then eliminating those other aspects that could be driving the rest of the nature of the anxiety. So that's really the nature of it. It can go back to anything that you want to do well in. If you care enough, there of course is going to be some stressing points, but we're talking about those ones that you can control.
Yeah, that's great. I remember I'd run 6 miles on the track in college, and I'd be so amped up. Just so amped up. And you see runners before a race, even the marathon, you see them bouncing around, like shaking off energy. They're like doing all this kind of stuff. I swear to you, the first mile didn't even feel like running. In a 6 mile race, the first mile didn't even feel like effort. I was just present, floating, because I was so jacked up with that. I took all that all that energy, all that doubt, fear, worry, and it turned into excitement. Just changing the word to I'm so excited to have this. Because really, how awesome is it to have an opportunity to perform at a high level? It's amazing. It is such a gift. I mean, there's people who are just surviving in the world, and somehow you have an opportunity to run a race or have an opportunity to play a game. Oh my God, it's amazing. So to me, it actually carried you. You could take all that energy and just change it to the word excitement and it would carry you. It's incredible. But I think as a way to summarize all this stuff, just to put it all together, is that anxiety is an incredibly common thing, and all human beings have it from time to time. The problem is when that doubt, fear, worry, which is a normal thing, it's like an alarm clock going off in your head. It's telling you it's a call to action. It's not a call to paralysis. But the problem is people hold it as freaking paralysis. They don't mean to, but they're so afraid of the outcome that they just ball up. They literally lock up. And that can be avoided if you do the things we've been talking about. And the things that we know that work are to face this monster and see if it's a monster at all. And I promise you, every single thing, every single horrible thing in this sport, every single horrible thing in your life, you face this monster and you stand up to it, and I promise you the monster shrinks. It does. And once you see that, then you realize it's just this instinctive thing calling you to action. And the action is go for what you want. Go solve this problem. Go work harder. Go be better. Concentrate better. Train more. Don't train more. Maybe you just need a break for a little bit. Whatever the math is, be a problem solver and figure it out. Because in the end, I can tell you that over and over again, anxiety can be the great motivator for great things, or it can be the thing that holds you back. and there's nothing worse than regret.
Hey, well, Chris, just to play off your analogy with the monster, there's a reason why they call it beast mode when someone goes off on a big night. Like, they're in the attack mode, and that's really the reference point of this. You can't be on the receiving end of it. So all of our goalies, listeners, parents, families, everyone, if you see yourself or someone you love going through an anxiety point or a stressing point, just remind them, stay dialed and stay driven on your goals, as that's the only way you're going to accomplish success. And to all those who have left reviews, we appreciate it. To anyone who hasn't yet, any reviews and subscribes and likes are well appreciated, because we love doing this. We love being a great influence to the hockey and athletic community. And a reminder to follow us on all social platforms at Dialed and Driven. Chat with you soon.
One of the best saves you will ever see, keeps this game alive.
Chris Palmer again, the Hockey Mentality Podcast, Dialed and Driven.